Kid size? So what do you talk about that? Temptation face. Softness, kindness, but also she gets hurt.
Congratulations.
Everybody's kind of moving closer as I look older, so it is down there, and now everybody's up there.
Squeeze it out.
If you were thinking about it.
I'm going to send you a link, see if you can go on and see it.
Second what?
I'm going to send you a link that you can click on and see if you can go on.
Tell whether you're on the webinar? What email?
Just click on it.
That's it? There you go. No, that's just a little table.
It's a little delayed, but you get it. She looks
All right,
like
good morning, everyone. Go ahead and call the meeting to order. It's 9:07. City of Hollywood Firefighters Pension Board, Board of Trustees Monthly Pension Board meeting. Today's Thursday, September 26th. We do have a quorum. And Brian's here, so we have a super quorum. Good morning, Brian. Morning. My understanding Derek's not going to be here this morning. Reminder, if you want to sign in, make sure you sign in on that sheet so that way when the minutes when the minutes are prepared, you'll be listed as an attendee at the meeting. Otherwise, it's not guaranteed. Since the last meeting, unfortunately, we've had passing Michael Hartling.
Michael Hartling, correct.
Michael Hartling. So if we all could take, well, here, besides Mr. Hartling, is there anyone else that we need to take a moment of silence for as well? Okay. All right, so then, we'll take a moment of silence for Michael Hartling. He passed away on December 15, 2019. Okay. All right. Moving on to the next portion of the agenda, the public comments. I know that there's probably a few. Okay, just when, I know, we know, generally know who everyone is. Once again, everything's being recorded, so just say your name so that way it doesn't get transcribed.
Steve Newmark, retiree. Per last meeting, we said we were going to open up the discussion about the drop distribution policy. Want to wait till that comes up?
No, tell us what the issue, what your concerns now.
Well,
I
I
mean,
think,
it's on the agenda, so I mean, it's gonna be discussed if you want to just.
should we go wait?
Yeah, sure.
I just wanna
Either
make
way,
sure-
whatever you're more comfortable with.
We'll just wait.
I say, if you wanna lay your concerns, and that way maybe we'll be able to address them, and we won't have as much back and forth as we sometimes typically do. Other concerns you have right now, or you're just waiting to hear what we have to say first?
Well, there's concerns as far as, you know, how it's made up, and we thought we were gonna have John Brett here to discuss that with him, our consultant, and possibly a way to modify it. You know, I know you asked for feedback from retirees.
Agendas?
I know you asked for feedback from
Anybody else?
retirees.
Woo-hoo-hoo, there you go, Chuck, you're getting one anyway.
Thought maybe we could have more of a discussion, figure out a timeframe.
Huh?
Okay, so yeah.
Yeah, put it all
Looks nice, looks nice.
Let's see, let's see what gets discussed.
I'm gonna put
as far as
agendas up here, there's also a sign-in sheet
I'll let
up
you
here.
come back in.
Okay.
when we get-
Tom Carl, retiree. I don't know would be able to answer this, but I'm wondering if probably Michelle could answer that. Has the city made their requirement to the state to release the chapter monies yet?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Is the board aware of how much money that they're holding right now?
I get letters.
There's about 6.6 million for
Less than I
PD,
thought.
and I think there's about another probably close to 6 million, for fire. So that's, that's a lot of money. Does the city have any intentions of meeting the requirements, or what are we doing with the chapter money? Is it going to be funded?
Okay. What's that for?
1 second.
So, it looks like the city has cut a check to Fiduciary Trust for almost the amount of $5 million.
Awesome.
To make up our contributions.
Michelle, would you like to go back
Michelle
and
has
any
a
other
cop-
letters?
Michelle has a copy of the
The
check.
city cut a check for 5 million?
It's right here.
Pretty sure it's actually.
Yeah.
Please, you guys are making me nervous.
Since we're on that point, I have a question.
Oh,
Wait, wait,
When you're done,
yeah, it looks like, and they submitted a letter to Michelle, as a letter from the Director of Financial Services saying, enclosed is a check for $4,987,930. In order to bring this pension plan into compliance, the state has agreed to allow the cities to submit payment for the outstanding 13th check pre-funding by September 30th, 2019. By way of this letter, the city's remaining the full amount due of $4,987,000.
how much do they owe the fund? 4 million?
$4,987,000.
It's almost $5 million.
Just under five, yeah.
And they owe PD, what, 6.6 million?
I assume that the same
Awesome.
check was sent
Awesome.
over to PD, so, we'll follow up and, make sure that
That,
the
let me
state's
ask
going
you a
to.
quick question, and then that money that they've been holding, of ours, the 5 million, is there any way we can get interest on that, or no? That's just our penalty for not
Yeah.
meeting the requirements? Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Quick question is, just to refresh my memory, why were they holding the check back? It's been a few years, so, and then what they agreed to, what they agreed to now by paying it?
I don't know if they agreed to anything by paying it,
What
but
do you mean when you
the
pay it?
state had taken the position that the city needed to pre-fund the amount of the 13 check, and that it couldn't be rolled into the normal cost of the plan in the actuarial evaluation, that they actually had to pre-fund it, and the whole lawsuit that the city originally filed 2-3 years ago had to do with that
They were
issue. So it-
doing a lot of things about the 13 check, that's what
I don't know if the city's gonna take the position that they made the payment without prejudice to their rights in that lawsuit, or they've sort of agreed that they're gonna refund it from now on.
Is that something you'll follow up on, I guess?
Yeah.
Okay, just question, trying to clarify what that meant. Okay.
Not every day you get a check for.
It's nice, but I just wonder what it meant.
Yeah. You wanna end the meeting on that note?
That's
Motion to adjourn.
nowhere to go, but,
Right, nobody goes down after receiving a check to the question while answering. Anything else as far as public comment? Anyone else?
So, Michelle, you need to get that check to Fiduciary Trust
on my account? I will, yeah.
Just a percentage. All right, next on the agenda, the approval of the minutes from the August 26, 2019 meeting.
And
Sorry,
just
go ahead.
on that also, somebody should reach out to John Breath and see how he wants to allocate
Yes.
those monies, whether it's just gonna be pro rata across the board, or whether he wants to.
Elementary school student fund books are here with us. Meeting minutes from August 26, 2019. I know I received them by email, I received them. Anybody not received them? Would have an opportunity to review them. Any comments, requested changes or corrections? None. Any motion regarding the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Chris made the motion, Ralphie. Second. Chris made the motion, Ralphie seconded, as far as approving the minutes as they're drafted for the August 26, 2019 meeting. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? So 4-0. New business is the Anthony Venus initial disability hearing, from my understanding.
Mr. Venus reached out to our office and asked for a continuance of the initial hearing, which we have no problem with, does not prejudice either the fund or the disability applicant, so suggestion is to.
Do we need to vote, or is it just?
Just do a vote, to motion to continue.
Okay. Does anybody have anything to say regarding continuing it, or an objection? Anybody got a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Brian's got a motion to continue the disability hearing for Anthony Venus. Second. Chris, second. All those in favor of continuing the initial disability hearing for Anthony Venus, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, passed. Stu, your report?
Nothing specific under the report, other than an update on the 3 lawsuits. First, we have well, 4 lawsuits. The first one being the one that the city brought against the fund with regard to the pre-funding of the 13th check. And, I mean, it's still an active case, but there has been no movement on it. So, you know, I will reach out to the city and see what their position is with regard to whether they're gonna go forward with the case or not. The drop loan case is the Dingus Kellerman case. They have filed an amended complaint. We filed a motion to dismiss, and it has not been set for hearing yet, so there's nothing to report there. The Kellerman-Allen case, which is the first 13th check case, there is also a motion to dismiss pending. Counsel for the plaintiffs changed law firms, and his staff just reached out this week requesting a hearing for the motion to dismiss at the end of October or the beginning of November. So we'll get that set, and we'll probably have a hearing, and we'll let you know of the hearing date in case anybody wants to attend. And the Chard case, we filed a motion to stay, and it was heard by the court months and months ago, and we still have not received a decision on that. In the meantime, discovery is proceeding. We've been served with interrogatories, requests for reduction of documents, and requests for admissions, which I believe is actually due tomorrow, and we have sent out initial discovery to be served on the plaintiffs as well. So no real update, but for the next meeting, I would like us to schedule an executive session just to discuss some strategy in all 3 of those cases, not the city case, but the drop loan case and the 213 check cases. I see that next meeting date scheduled, at least on the agenda, for October 21st. Is that the right date, or is it
That's
October
correct, yeah.
30th, not Halloween?
No, we changed the schedule around.
Okay,
Um,
get that on the calendar, and we'll get an executive session notice sent for the meeting on the 21st. Other than that,
Okay.
nothing to report other than the items contained in old business under the agenda.
Michelle?
I just wanted to bring up your billing procedure calls for 2 signatures, 2 trustee signatures. So there, what happens is when we have you guys sign off on the warrant, we send that to fiduciary, and it's a couple of weeks before the vendors get paid, which typically is fine. We do like to try to hurry reimbursement requests, check requests, fiduciary liability premiums, anything that would have a deadline. Because remember, we're waiting a month, and then it takes another 2 weeks, you know, after we get y'all signatures. So, other plans that we have, they either only require 1 signature or no signature, and we go ahead and pay all the bills, and then we bring you all the consent agenda like we always do. to y'all, but what's gonna happen is, yeah.
Wasn't there just a matter of?
We had an issue with, the previous.
That's what I'm at, so I'm not remembering wrong.
Minister.
Don't remember the details. About May, right?
That's, I think, I did,
Does anyone here,
no,
what's the issue you're having besides tracking the email?
All of you.
we're all the problem.
Well, you all are very busy and sometimes it's hard to get, you know, we send you the warrants for signature and, you know, sometimes it takes a while to get them back. The main thing is reimbursement checks and, anything with the deadline for this year.
It's gonna hurt the iPad. I think,
We're already auto billing the copier, your water, and the internet. So that gets auto billed, and when we bring the invoices to you, those invoices have already been paid, and you all are just ratifying, saying, yes, we agree with these numbers. Even if you all went down to one signature, I think that, may speed the process along a little bit, because then I would only need, you know, one signature.
could we just modify what types of transactions require a signature? Wouldn't that just make it?
Sure. I think, well,
I
I'm
mean,
saying you
I'd
have
always,
to-
I'd always want
Any-
one trustee to sign.
Because here's the
sign
thing,
off on it before.
the only thing I've heard is that we're the.
Yeah.
No, no, no,
so
it's
I'm saying- what I'm saying
not
is
Not in a bad way,
Relax.
I meant it joking, but also.
Relax it, ease up the restrictions so that she can do more without our
You guys are the
signatures.
delay.
And then, for something, out of the ordinary, a high dollar amount,
It'll have to be reviewed anyway.
Yeah,
Next meeting anyway. We're reviewing the
I have
warrants that have been paid.
And you guys are
We can question it
ratifying
then.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to do it after the fact, but, if it's gonna at least, for the most part, speed the process up.
yeah, I agree.
What's up?
Going back to what Brian, previous problem I remember, I assume our new actuary, our / actuary, plan administrator, the whole group is all individually bonded. That was the issue last time.
Oh, and yes, absolutely.
That's one of the things I'm trying to help you there with, all right? Because last time we didn't have the individuals, we weren't having our administrators bonded, or background checks, or whatever we had to do to get that. So, I'm not making any bad reflection on you, I'm trying to help here.
Sure, yeah, I understand. And I'm not familiar with the history, so I,
Either way, it was.
I thought I'd just throw it out there.
Yeah, I'm fine with backing off on that.
So, if there's anything that we wanna do, we have to make a motion here, or does
Re-
it have to?
Require no prior approval,
On such things as what?
any invoices, paying invoices.
Things such as the attorney bill and professionals bill, I would want one of the trustees to sign off, at least one of the trustees to look at that before. And
So
it's
maybe
not a
just
rush
change
to
it
pay
from-
any of those, I mean.
You wanna change?
It's really not, we've had a couple of requests from some of the vendors, can you rush this payment?
Well, we meet monthly, I mean, I don't think we do much better than that.
I don't know, how many trustees?
They provide a service and it could take up to 6 weeks to get payment. The only other thing would be reimbursement checks.
That's normal, I mean, you have, I think, the authority to spend up to a certain amount in case there's emergency by yourself. I'm not sure what that amount, in administrative rule, I think we have an administrative rule.
Okay.
To that effect, up to, if you have to buy something for the office, something
Right,
like that, or make a, if the copying machine needs to be fixed or something like that, you have the authority to do that, but just the regular bills of the pension fund should just come before the board and the warrant every month. I mean, if we were meeting quarterly, I'd understand that,
Sure.
we may have to pay things in between meetings, but as long as we're meeting monthly, I don't see a need for a vendor to be paid, outside of the meeting.
And they can also, if they want to adjust when they submit their invoices to us, closer to our meeting at the end of the month, that would be.
What about travel reimbursement checks? Are you all okay with?
Yeah, I don't, as long as you guys are comfortable waiting, I don't mind. It's within 30 days.
For one trustee signature, I don't care, I just put no trustee signature on stuff, I still think at least one of us needs to take a look at it. So, right now it's 2,
Correct.
you wanna make it 1? Prior to motion?
I'm fine with that, yeah.
Is that okay?
Wanna make a motion?
Do we need to make a motion, or we need to rewrite some?
I'm not sure if we have an administrative rule to that effect, I'll take a look. But make a motion, and then I'll look, and if we have to change the administrative rule, we'll change the administrative administrative role.
So we'll make a motion to modify the current policy and allow just one signature for approval.
On things that we're currently required to. All right, all those, any second regarding Brian's motion? I'll second that. All right, I'll second, any discussion, further discussion on it? All those in favor of changing the policy where in instances we're required the two trustees' signatures for reimbursements on and payments of certain vendors, changing it to one, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Opposed. Chris opposed. 3-1. And 3-1-1. Motion passes. And of course, you can't sign off on your own.
Right.
All
All right, thank you guys.
right, you had your annual state report.
It's been submitted, that's the only, we're waiting on, approval, I'll let you all know when that happens.
And then schools.
And then the schools, same thing, if anybody wants to register, just let us know, and we'll take care of that for you.
I'll let you know about the New Orleans one.
On the state report update, are there any issues that remain on the table other than the city not
That was the only
refunding
one.
the 13 checks? So
That's
this
the
might
only one. This
take care of it, and they
wrap
might
up.
approve the state report. So unless it's approved by September 30th, the city can't take, credit for that amount in the valuation, because it's not gonna come in the fiscal year. So, I mean, we wanna make sure within the next 5 days whether or not that was the only issue, and we'd like to get the state report approved before September 30th for the benefit of the city, so they can, Raylene can credit that amount as part of the city contribution in the next actuarial evaluation.
As of 9:30.
Yeah.
I'll follow up. I'll follow up with, our financial team and, the girl that takes care of the annual reports. And, that's all I have.
Old business, the 300-hour overtime provision.
So you do have just a letter for consideration that came in to the trustees dated September 17th from the city manager, saying that it was his understanding that based upon all the negotiations and the collective bargaining agreement, that the 300 hours of overtime was just a total thing, and it wasn't 300 of hours per year. I guess the only remaining, and I think from a reading of the minutes, that's the conclusion that you came to at the last meeting. I think the only issue remaining is how pension contributions are gonna be taken out on the overtime. And it's really, a decision for, I think, the city to make. We can make suggestions such as them just taking out contributions on 100 hours per year, but, I mean, in the end, it has to be trued up, so you're not paying contributions on the amount that is not considered pensionable down the road. So I don't know if Raylene has anything to add on that.
It just has to be something that the the payroll department is able to do, and then I think we still need to know, as far as benefit calculation purposes, are we using the most recent hourly rate when we're including that 300 hours, just how, in practice, we're going to implement it when we're doing calculations.
This whole thing is I think it's, I don't wanna say confusing, but the way that it's being interpreted seems, from your guys' standpoint, it seems like it makes it more complicated to do the average final compensation calculation if it's only 100 hours per year. Because you take, I read over the ordinance, and it says, wages, workers' comp or supplemental comp, education pay, each one of those, forms of compensation, it doesn't say per year because it's understood, your wages per year, so your workers' comp or supplemental comp per year. It doesn't have to add that phrase because it's understood that that's what you look at, and then you take the 3 highest years, so whatever the years are, whatever number you pick, 2017, what are the wages in that year? Whatever workers' comp or supplemental comp was paid in that year, whatever education pay was paid in that year, whatever overtime was earned in that year. And it should be up to 300 hours in that year. Because in the end, what they're gonna do is mathematically divide all of those, each of those 3 years, they're gonna add them together and divide by 3. And the only way you get 300 after dividing by 3 is to have up to 900 total. So if you want 300 hours counted in your overtime after doing a division by 3, you're not gonna have 300 hours if it's 100 per year. You're gonna have 33 and a third, right? It's not gonna be 300 hours, it's gonna be less than 50 hours added to or counted in their compensation. Or 100 hours, sorry, that's not right. 100 hours per year would equal 300, but then you divide by 3 and you get 100. So if it's 300 hours that they wanted to count.
I mean, I think you get credit for the 300 hours, it's just a matter of how
But
you
you're gonna
cost
divide
it
it by
out
three.
in the
Right, it's an
valuation.
average.
Yeah, so it's, the
But-
way HUD talked about it and the way even the city managers, the city attorney talked about it, the way it seemed like they understood it was you would get your average final compensation calculated and then add on to that final number 300 hours of overtime. That's how, it seemed like that's how they understood it would be. Not included in the calculation of average final compensation.
Yeah, I think, Derek and HUD both were thinking as if, like, in the same way as the lump sums, the accrued sick and vacation, like, you just add it to that final year, and then you're still dividing by 3, so
Well,
it's still
but
part of the average, but.
Okay, so the accrued sick, if you read the ordinance with the selling back of unused accrued, it's not sick, though, it's
Holiday,
vacation.
yeah.
Well, holiday is different, because look, I can cash out vacation every year. I can cash out, comp time too, every year of my career. So what it says in the ordinance is accrued, unused, annual leave that is sold back in your last year prior to entering the drop or retiring. But it doesn't say that last year it doesn't specify that last year is your highest year, one of your highest 3. You could have your 3 highest somewhere else.
Sure.
And then whatever you got, and this is the part I wanted to ask you about, is let's say my highest 3 years are somewhere, some other group of years, and then next year I enter the drop and I cash out my unused annual leave. How are you gonna incorporate that dollar amount into my pension payment calculation?
I think it would just depend on if adding that to the final year would make that year now one of the highest
Let's
of
just
the
say it
3,
doesn't.
so then that wouldn't be included.
It has to be included though. It doesn't say it has to be in one of the highest 3 years, it just says, and we will include the payment of your unused accrued annual leave. So how would you guys do that? It's not requiring that it's one of the highest 3 years.
Right.
So you would.
I don't think that's come up, I feel like most.
Luckily, I guess, but.
So I think we would probably bring that to the attention of the board if that were to be the case, but all the calculations that we've done, the most recent year is included in that highest 3.
There's guys that drop that are lieutenants and then drop back to driver when they're done.
Yeah.
And they might have that happen, so.
I think if we just add it to the most recent year then,
I don't know. It's not in that year's wages, it's not
Right.
part of that year.
Right.
So to me, it would make sense, I guess, if you just did the 3 highest years, averaged them out, and then add that number.
but it still needs to be an average.
I have to look it up. I don't know if that's in the definition of wages or average final compensation.
We need a recommendation from the actuary, as to how to cost it out, for approval, and by the board, but I think that it would need to be run by, or I suggest that it be run by the city and the union, because I do not want to do anything that's going to, well, yeah,
I don't wanna
that would
delay either.
start any kind of litigation. If there's a disagreement between the 2 parties, then, it would be a board decision to make. But, I think that we need to get all 3 parties on the same.
Because I think the city and Derek were thinking it was 300 total.
And I think what matters the most is what the impact statement says. And that's 100
We did
per year.
100 hours
Yeah,
per
so.
year, but it's still 300 total.
Which, they can change the impact statement at any point.
Right, we
Cost
can
it out
Well,
update the impact.
in another way,
How is
but.
it,
how is it?
No, yeah, cause that's not, I mean, how can they change, after the fact, change the impact statement to a higher cost after the commission in front of all the voters approved it at that other cost? You know what I mean? You can't, that's not.
I mean, it would need to be brought to the attention of the
Yeah,
city. This is the way we're gonna do it, and they'd have to sign off on it.
I think the better route is do what the impact statement says, and then any other, personal disagreements we have with that are gonna have to wait until maybe another contract to get addressed. I mean, that's,
Alright.
I'm just voicing my,
So why don't you task the
Thoughts.
actuary and our office into drafting an administrative rule as to how this is gonna be determined for consideration at the next meeting, because I think it needs some additional thought by all involved.
I don't want, again, it's like, there's, 41 calculations waiting. I don't,
Maybe even a few more than that.
yeah, so. Are you saying we can't?
I'm not saying you can't.
Okay, so, does anyone else have any thoughts or reservations about this? I mean, what would you guys, how would you guys proceed?
I mean, I would like to see a pension calculation before all the changes were done, before referendum, because kind of the language was kind of built in about the 300 hours. Like, that language really hasn't changed.
Right.
You know, they kind of revert back into it. I like to see, I'm in agreement that it's 300 per year, because, like Brian said, it didn't finish the sentence with the wages per year, or the 300 hours per year. It was kind of like, understood that we're getting it on an annual, we're getting that member's number based on what he earned that year.
Right.
You know, so to say we're only gonna do 100 per year, it would have to say it 100 per year with a maximum of 300 hours, it just says up to 300 hours. Would like to see what a pension calculation was for a member who retired 10 years ago that had that same language. Did they use 300 per year? And I kind of think they did, but we can verify that. Kind of goes against what the letter from the assistant city attorney says.
Right.
He says, but he also said the intent was that it was supposed to be accumulative. He mentioned something like that in the meeting last month. It says, that the member would eventually accrue 300 hours, where if you want to include the 300 hours, then it's the same anyway. Then, so you're gonna give them 300 hours, still in this final number, so. It's what the letter says is kind of different than maybe the way we've actually been, applying it, so definitely need some clarification on that.
Yeah, that's why, I wouldn't rush to a decision today.
What about chapter 175? I know there was a period there where they specified you could have up to 300 hours.
Right.
When they talk about it, are they talking about, does the chapter specify if it's total or 300 per year, or?
Now it's total.
So they, in the statute, they expect, I guess, or we would interpret that statute to say, you include up to 300 hours total, and then you average it out by whatever your particular plan's definition of average final compensation is. That's right. And I guess, and does that mean it's prohibiting you from looking at it any other way? Because, with the statutes, that's the minimum, you can't go below it, but you can go, the city can be more generous with the benefits, but in this particular case, the statute is specifically limiting 300 hours.
Yeah.
So there's no wiggle room there, it's just 300 hours.
Yeah.
So we would be,
I'll pull up the language for you.
we would be defying the statute, I guess, if we looked at it the way I said, so then we can't do that.
It's up to 300 per year, with overtime included,
It says per year in the statute?
as specified in the plan or collective bargaining agreement.
Okay, so then there is a different way to approach it.
But,
that's what the impact
I mean,
statement
it's-
says, then that's what, I think we need to do it that way.
You can't really interpret something other than how it was bargained for and contractually agreed to. Regardless of if there was an error in the way the ordinance was drafted.
I understand that, I agree with that, so. Does anyone disagree with that conclusion or that approach? So that we can, huh? Yeah, yeah.
That's what my understanding was after
So
last
then-
meeting and, yeah.
I think we should just go with that. I mean,
Why wouldn't we?
because of what I was, I mean, just, I think the ordinance needs to be written differently if that's what they intended. It should be more specific.
Right, but we still have to act.
Oh, no, I'm not saying now, I'm just saying like, you know, that's something to look at down the road. For right now, I think we need to get this wrapped up.
Does it require a motion or just direction?
No, I think she had direction, she was costing
So,
it out already.
but at what hourly rate for those 300 hours
I think that was what the catch was.
Well, that, and when are they gonna stop collecting
in the
contributions?
contribution?
So,
That was the thing we got hooked on last time. I think we got it.
Well-
I think we're in agreement that it's 300 hours total, but just how to actually do that as far as the calculations are concerned.
I mean, you're the one that does the calculations, we don't know how that happened, I mean, we
Well,
don't
no,
know.
I just need
Draft.
direction, we just
So
need
I
to
think-
get that data
I mean, I
from
think it
the
would be
city and.
the salary amount of the last 300 hours.
I mean, it could be
Work.
different hourly rates for those 300, so we just don't know.
Well, with the way you said it, it sounds like it would just be up to 100 hours per year of their, if they work it in their highest years, or no?
That's,
Over the career, or is it, because the city was saying it
Based on
was,
the timeframe to pull that.
right, they can't just arbitrarily start counting 300 hours, so it would be like rolling period. Nobody knows when someone is going to retire, so you don't know when to start
Do you
counting.
collect member contributions on 100 hours per year? Is that how you do it, or what is it?
Don't know the answer off the top of my head. I can see if I can find out for the end of the meeting.
Yeah. No, it's on.
So you wanna wait for the answer and move
I
on?
mean, I just don't know what.
Right, no, I know you need.
Right,
data.
to actually be able to do the math,
You
we
got
just
it.
need to know
You got-
what data we need to be able to do it.
Okay. You mostly have what you need from us, you just need.
Mostly.
I mean,
Need to
the
know
last thing
but
is.
we need the little pieces of data in order to actually,
The number that attaches with the overtime, what
Right.
they're saying.
And
so. it
in
could
the
be-
archives, there's no examples from before 2011 for how they used to do it. You can't just stay
We
consistent.
weren't the actuary then.
No, I know that, but there's
I mean,
records.
we can ask the city for data, we have a few calculations from the prior actuary, we can.
What would you like to see? I mean,
Huh?
what are you looking for?
Well, I wanna know if they, you know, if we're not gonna, if someone's not gonna get, if someone works 101 hours of overtime in a year, and that 1 hour is not eligible for pension purposes, then there should be no member contribution on it. Anything above that, and that to me is the issue, is when do we stop contributing if we're working overtime? And then the next issue is what hourly rate are they gonna use to calculate how it's gonna be used to calculate our pension payments?
So what would you like to see?
I wanna know how they did it in the past, so we can just stay consistent.
Morning, Chuck Tilly, President of Local 1375. Most of the numbers are calculated when they do a number for you to enter in. Once you enter into RPRB, or you enter into a drop, your rate at that time is normally how they calculate benefit. So why would that not be calculated for your overtime at that point? And that's what the union would like to see, because all the other numbers are calculated off that point. Your sick payout, your other issues are all paid out at the rate you enter drop or RPRB, right? So why shouldn't that be the same?
yeah, I don't have an issue with that.
I agree.
Okay.
And I mean, if the parties are silent on it, and there's something that's ambiguous, you always are on the side of granting the most liberal interpretation in favor of the member.
If we're litigating, but if we go the route, that's wouldn't we do it at the highest
Yeah,
rate?
it's at the rate that.
The same hourly rate
I don't
as
think it's
used
300.
for the other boards.
Yeah. Does anybody see it a different way? We need to
They probably would
direct.
calculate like that, actually.
Direct.
What?
Use the, right, everyone agrees, everyone use the
I'll
highest.
go with it, yeah, I mean, it's fine.
I mean, how else would you interpret it?
I don't know any other, I'm trying to think and let you guys discuss it out.
By highest, you mean most recent?
Whatever the
or-
whatever the number is for the
Okay,
calculation.
The
the
same-
same hourly rate used in the calculation. Okay.
Well, but
Sorry, just to clarify, it's the same way you're gonna pay, say I enter the drop today, the same way you're gonna pay me my sick time and my
Yep.
vacation pay is at that rate?
Yep.
The union feels that that's the
Consistent
rate the
rate.
overtime should be paid at.
Okay.
Anybody see it differently?
I mean, that's,
And I'm
I think
sure
that's
it's
the
been
most
handled like
logical
that.
way of interpretation.
That was
Yeah.
intent.
So, wait, so we're just saying, that guy worked 300 hours in his career. Doesn't matter if he worked them in this year, the last year,
Yes.
any of his highest three. He just worked 300 hours in his career. We're gonna cash him out for entry into the drop and just say, here's, you know, in your pension calculation, we're just adding in 300 hours of overtime at this hourly rate.
Yeah.
As long as they have, like, 300.
So
Get back to the
for
opinion.
someone who drops back, who worked overtime as a lieutenant but then dropped back to a driver and then cashes out, they're gonna get a different hourly rate than when they actually work the overtime.
Well, it depends when they drop back, Brian, if they drop back prior to entering dropper PRB.
Yeah.
Or after. So most drop back after, so they're already getting their higher rate. See what I mean? So it's not a penalty to the member.
Okay.
Before they went in the drop.
All right, just like if you gain an hour of sick time, right, you get that 5.5 hours right at the beginning, day one is a probie.
Yep.
Well,
At that
when you
rate.
cash that out, if you never used it, you get that rate, right? We just feel that's an overall fair and balanced way to do it.
Okay, what about contributions on overtime?
Okay. You want me to weigh in on that?
Yeah.
I mean, I sat with finance, so
Yeah.
I have a good answer to that.
You seem to have a lot of the information we're looking.
Right now, there's a lot of ambiguity with what's going on with that. Here's how they see it. Annually, they reset the overtime hours. Soon as 300 hours hit annually, January 1st, it resets. So as soon as you hit 300, let's say you work 7 months, and you already got 300 hours of overtime, and they're taking your pension contribution, whatever you're supposed to contribute comes out, right? Because it's pensionable. What happens is, once you work 1 hour over there, or 5 minutes over that, just per se, a new code pops up, and they no longer take money out. I had them show me that, because we have there's a lot of question about this. The major question isn't that. I understand the reset, and they don't take the money out, and I've been shown proof of it. Okay, we spent a couple hours with them. The problem is that if only 300 hours are pensionable, what about all the other overtime that I worked? Where's that pension? You took that pensionable money out. Where is it? I mean, the member may be entitled to a refund. Remember, let's say you worked in your career 3,000 hours of overtime.
Yeah.
And you, right? I mean,
It has to be
No, I
true.
think it's
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
end.
okay, theoretically, if you look at this, say you work 1,000 hours of overtime in your career. Well, the entire time, they have been taking pensionable money out as long as you didn't exceed the 300 hours per year, right? You follow me? So for 700 hours, money's been taken out over your career. Where's that pensionable money? Where's that 8%, 9.5%, or 0.5%? That money probably went back into the fund, but that actually is members' money.
But you're saying that they do stop collecting member contributions above 300 hours per year.
That's correct.
Okay, so, I mean, it's just like wages though.
Yes.
We work every year of our career and pay 8% of that salary, wage, whatever you wanna call it, towards our pension. It's a contribution that we make towards our pension, but that year might not count in our contribution. It's just part of the deal, you know, if you want wage, because they don't know when we're gonna retire, so that year might be the last year, you know, that's it. So we have to collect, we're not gonna refund you your 8% on that wage, because it's not gonna count in your pension. It's just part of the deal, you know what I mean? Like, you're paying your part to have your wages count, and now you're paying your part to have overtime count.
That's a matter,
You know, like, that's
that's
how
a
I
matter of
look at it.
discussion between the union and the city. It's not a pension fund, really.
Right, because we're just, all this has come up over time here. We're just trying to figure out where does it go. If, as you say, it's part of the deal, and that's something that the union feels was equitable and fair, then it's part of the deal. But I just can't go with that statement, you know what I mean? Because it does need to be investigated, and if somebody can clarify, that'd be outstanding. No one's looking to pick a pocket here, we're just making sure the right funds are going in the right places, that's all.
And so, you're saying that is really a city union issue, not
Yeah.
anything we can do. What we can do is come up with a policy regarding the
We don't tell the
300.
city how much, what to withhold on what amounts, I mean, it's just.
So as far as any
It's a
act-
city question, and if the union has a problem with how the city's doing it, then they could always file.
We essentially
an
just take
unfair
direction.
grievance or an unfair labor practice charge.
taking direction on whatever the city's saying,
Yeah.
essentially.
And it's not a pension fund issue.
And just to clarify, that only came up, we weren't even bringing it up
Yeah.
on our side in here, you had brought it up and asked me the question.
Yeah.
I've spoke to the city and we're gonna sit down and discuss it.
Yeah,
So
you
we're not
should.
looking to press the board to make a decision in essence, all right? Madonna, I don't want that to go back to the city the wrong way, because I already
Yeah.
spoke with Kelly.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're not looking to impact Oregon, we're not looking for the ULP, it's just a discussion, I was asked a question, all right?
Yep,
Just wanna
absolutely.
clarify.
Yeah, thanks for the information.
And Norm's got it recorded, so we're good.
No, yeah, I'm sure, but it's important, because we have a good relationship right now, we want it to continue.
Got it. All right, so it seems like as far as anything we can do or not do, it's just a matter of whether, and it seems like we all agree as far as the $300 rate, the last.
The same, consistent.
Yeah, the consistent rate that you're doing the
Used throughout
calculation
the
from.
calculation.
Right. Anyone see it differently? Any action we have to take, or should
A
we
motion,
make that?
motion to that effect.
I'm going to make a motion to use the overtime at the same rate that you're doing their calculations for the last. Right, Derek always.
As leave,
What is
as
it?
their leave payout?
To use the
What's-
same consistent hourly rate throughout the benefit calculation, including
Okay.
the 300 hours of overtime.
That's what Derek would have said.
Yes.
Consistent.
All right, who's making that motion?
Ralph. I'm making a motion to include
That language.
Wages when you enter the drop of the PRV to calculate your 300 hours of overtime.
All right. is there-
Consistent with all the other ones, yeah.
All right, is there a second? Second. For a second, all those in favor, or any other discussion on it? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. All right, anything else on that? We'll move on to the revised drop distribution policy.
Get the easy stuff.
All right, anything on the revised drop distribution policy? Jacob? Yes, Ralph.
Yeah, I would like to see you reconsider doing anything to revise the distribution policy. When John Brett was here, he said that in terms of the financial impact on the fund, status quo, it was a coin toss, because you can't predict if we have to liquidate an asset today, is it, potentially gonna stock go up or down, who knows? So he couldn't identify a financial impact. Administratively, we've done some research, and we want to share that. Did you give that? I mentioned this a couple of months ago, but we put it together as an exhibit so you can look at it yourselves. We went through the foster and foster records for a 17-month period, and we took all the drop distributions, and we excluded the reoccurring monthly distributions, and we excluded the required minimum distributions. So in 17 months, with 150 potential drop participants, there were 93 distributions that were completely discretionary. And again, this is public record, we're not revealing anything that anybody else couldn't have come up with. So if you've got 93 distributions over 17 months, that's 5.5 distributions a month, discretionary. So from an administrative impact, it's hard to see that justifies changing the policy and restricting retirees' access to their own dollars. So of those 93 distributions, a total of 49 different people made them. So you've got only a third of drop participants are doing the discretionary distributions. The other 2/3 either aren't doing it, or again, it's the monthly reoccurring, or it's the RMDs. So again, that's not very impactful. So 64 of the 93 distributions were for $10,000 or more, because somebody had made the statement that people are using the drop accounts like it's an ATM. And there's definitely some very small distributions that get made. You can see that on the exhibit. But if 64 out of 93, that's, you know, roughly 2/3 are for $10,000 or more, that's a pretty substantial purpose that retiree is making that distribution request over. There were only 12 withdrawals for less than $3,000, and 5 of those were from the same person. And that's not critical of that person because they're entitled to do it by today's status quo. But again, you can always find an extreme or two from either end of the spectrum. But overall, the status quo works. It's not as burdensome as has been suggested. So if you break that down even further, 4 members took 6 distributions apiece. 3 members took 4, and 4 members took 3. So over that period of time, over half the distributions were from only 11 people. So that means the other 140 are working within the system fine, no impact, no burden, no abuse of the system. So another issue I have with your rule is you define what my emergency is gonna be. And that rule says categorically, no excuses, no allowances, that an emergency has to be related to health, taxes, divorce, or legal issues. So if I go home today and a palm tree fell through the roof of my house, you can't designate that an emergency and allow me to take a distribution. You have language in there that says the board can determine an emergency, but you can't add to those categories. So the only thing you could do is say, okay, Russ, your tax problem's not big enough. I don't think it's big enough, so we're not gonna let you have your money. You know, why would you wanna be in the position of having to make those decisions for people's personal lives? Again, you can't demonstrate that the current system works. And even if you look at the timing of the distributions, most of these would have been permissible under your proposed rules, but some of them wouldn't. And again, if the status quo overwhelmingly works, why would you want to create a situation that causes an undue burden on some retirees on occasions? Right now, it's unfettered access, and again, you haven't demonstrated that the status quo is a problem. And because the change could be, and probably will be, again, I'm asking you to reconsider and just withdraw the administrative rule and move forward with the status quo.
Anything from the board? When was this 17-month period?
We did the research probably in July, so this is like 3 months stale. But it was the most current 17 months as of, when did you do that?
2018 to 19?
It was probably from May back, you know, whatever was on the foster policy.
Why is it 17 months? I mean,
Because that was all that was posted.
Got it.
Anything from the board?
I mean, I could go back and forth with you. I mean, for one, we did demonstrate, you know, we didn't, but staff said, you know, gave reasons why this was necessary to us, and we listened to them and we made changes because of that. I mean, your history or your study here, on the flip side, I could look at it and say, well, there's not a lot of people, so our change isn't gonna affect a lot of people. So why are you worried about it? It's not gonna hurt anybody because you're saying there's not anyone doing anything. Going back to the definition of an emergency, I mean, the first thing is legal obligation. So when your palm tree falls on your roof and you hire a contractor,
Is that legal?
you're gonna sign a contract with that guy to do the work. That's a legal obligation. So you could bring the contract here and say, hey, I need to take out this money to pay this worker. Here's a contract that's legal. Approve this for me, and that's it. We would have to approve it. It's a legal obligation.
Well, I mean, you could just change the language to say it's defined but not limited to these.
We could, but it's not as specific. My point is, it's not as specifically limiting as he's making it sound. So, I mean, that's all I got to say.
Well, it's according to what you have written here in the policy.
And I'm just telling you that what is written here in the policy isn't as restricting as you're making it seem, right? So.
Can I ask a question on the frequency? Right now in the policy, there's only 4 days out of the year we can get. Other than being able to take money out, all of our money
had the discussions, and I think we fleshed it out as far as, I know HUD was here last time, and he had brought it up and pointed out that, and he boiled it down to exactly how you said it. Yes, there's 4 days where you can make those options, but those options make it so that you can make your money available to you on terms of the policy, which is on a regular basis, and if you have something that comes up, you have the ability to ask the board to approve it. So it's not just the 4 days, you've got the ability to come back if you have the emergency, 100%.
If it comes under your guidelines, again, and then according to this, you have to, I guess, check with the board for approval.
I guess the question is, what if, are you concerned the board is gonna stonewall somebody who comes in and says they have damage to their house and say it's not a legal obligation?
I don't know. I don't know what we're allowed to do, if the board can say, well, that's not really under the guidelines, right now, again, we only have 4 days, and if we miss a window of opportunity, we have to wait another almost 4 months. I wonder if we could modify that to maybe once a month, as the
Well,
board.
you're also not waiting 4 months. It's not as if that date is a surprise. These dates are,
Well, what if you need money, let's say December, you're supposed to have something in by December 1st, and you don't need anything, but all of a sudden December 5th, you need some money. You're past that window, you can't get it January 1st, you can get it April 1st, but you can't get it January 1st. You can't, what I'm saying is that, there's a time constraint here, and there's a window of opportunity. Maybe we could make more flexible and lenient for retirees to have, maybe once a month, to go from, to modify this. We're just looking for a little more leniency for retirees, because right now we went from 100% for 25 years, and now we're going to less than 2% of the time to get money.
anything else from the board?
I'm comfortable with 1 month distributions, I don't care.
What do you guys want to do?
It's up to you. I mean, it's not really a legal question, it's what,
I
whether
understand his
the
concern.
administrative
We have
or-
gone from 100% access now to 4 times a year. I think monthly, in my estimation, is fair.
I wouldn't have a problem keeping it, I wouldn't have a problem changing it. It's just a matter of there needs to be the defined, and not just a, I don't
Yeah.
want
Okay, so what's gonna be the cutoff date for the monthly?
by the 5th. If someone submits by the 15th of the month, would you be able to have the funds available by the 1st?
Yeah, it
Kinda
depends on
like
the
how
amount
it's-
of the,
this is what I'm
I
saying.
can't say unequivocally yes or no, it depends on the amount of the distribution. If somebody's
I think-
asking for $600,000, then no,
I think,
it's gonna take a couple weeks.
30 days notice.
Is that enough time?
Well, if it's
I'm
not,
I'm
then we're right.
asking, because I don't know, I'm
I
not
know,
asking.
but I feel like if it's not, then we're right back to what we were.
Yeah, I mean, I think, does it even pay to do it if we're doing it once a month? I mean, is there really any big change at all to what we're doing now?
I don't think so.
Only if it's a 30 days notice. I think to me, if you're gonna say, well, 2 weeks notice every month, then why are we doing this?
Like I said, I have no problem with the way it is now, and I understand their concerns, I understand the way it's been, what before was dangerous word, and it's always been this way. That's, just because it's been that way, you had the 100% access, the issues were raised to the board, but if you guys wanna change, by all means, you guys are entitled to make the motions.
Excuse me, can you guys speak up a little bit?
Sure.
Well, can I just say on that note that, we retired under these circumstances. We planned our retirement, we knew we could get money out pretty freely, in our retirement. And while we're in our retirement, now you're changing the rules on this, and it makes it just that much more restrictive as we get older. You're talking about people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. Now we have to deal with how we get our money out of our drop accounts, We
And
certainly
that's the
don't
thing,
want-
is
we
that,
don't want to
and I
plan
think
anything
we
bad.
discussed it, these are drop accounts, these aren't, when you need money, go to the bank account.
We're not saying that. We're willing to work with the pension fund. We don't want to hurt the fund. But as, listening to John, Brett say that, it's a flip of the coin when you take this money out. Who's to say that 30 days later, the market's going to be up? It could be down. It could be a detriment to take that money out.
I'm not really arguing with you, I'm good with what, if the board wants to change it, I'm open to, further discussions, we heard 1 month. Yes, Russ?
Jason, how about if we do what you said, where it's in by the first, or whatever date you gave.
Well, I just
Payable
don't know
by
if
the
that's enough.
15th, or in by the 15th and payable by the first, and then establish a threshold, you know, $50,000, $100,000, whatever it may be, that if your distribution request is above that threshold, then it takes 30 days.
Here's the problem, Russ. There'll be somebody who wants 50,001. Any number we pick, there always seems to be somebody who, has an issue. So-
Anytime you draw a line
Well,
on any purpose, you're gonna
Yes,
have.
here we
that
are.
issue.
We drew a line and now we're.
It's a very
we're talking
narrow
about
line.
it again. So, I mean, 50,000, how's that not arbitrary? How doesn't it cut off to 50,001 and cause us to be sitting here having the same discussions over whether 50,000 is appropriate or 60,000 is appropriate?
Administratively, it doesn't make a difference whether it's once a month or every day, because we're gonna be doing the same thing.
Right.
We're gathering up distribution requests and holding on to them, and then trying to determine if the amount's correct and.
I mean, it's probably harder on you if you say it's gotta be in by the 15th, and then it's gotta be paid by the 15th.
So we've got,
It's more, makes it
you know,
more
12 more deadlines to keep up
administratively
with,
difficult.
you know.
During
So if we're gonna do
that,
that, you might as well just leave it the way it was.
if somebody wanted to leave the fund, take their money and withdraw it out, do they have to wait till the end of the quarter? Or can they do it?
Take it anytime. They want the full balance, they can take it anytime.
I can tell you, I mean, I understand everybody, they want, the retirees want their 100% access, but it just doesn't sound like anything less than quarterly would make any sense.
I mean, what about if you put in a minimum, you know, required loan, you could do at any distribution you could do at any point in time, otherwise you gotta wait until,
I mean, I.
Quarterly.
We just need something.
so you just at least get rid of the, you know, 1,000, 2,000, just make it a minimum of 7,500, 10 grand, something like that,
Anybody
which
else?
would wipe out half of these.
Yeah. Brian, Chris, thoughts?
Russ, any comment on that?
75, that's a lot of money for a lot of
7,500.
retirees. 7,500 is still a lot of money for a lot of
Okay,
people.
that's what we're asking.
And if you, again, look at the actual distributions,
Or what? Leave the quarterly.
there were what, 11, it's over 17 months that were less than $3,000?
Yep.
What would you suggest as a number if we were to go this route?
For a minimum,
Yeah.
2,500?
So anything less than 2,500 is gonna require,
Let's make it 5.
well, what are we doing? We're doing below it, we have to, they
If it's
need.
below that, then they can go and ask for it pretty much on it. If it's below it quarterly, or below it?
We're
Then I'm
restricting the lower
Yeah.
number. Anything above it, they can come in whenever they want and get it. Is that correct?
That's a discussion, yeah.
That's what we're discussing, right?
Yeah.
So,
One second.
is that,
Honestly, administratively, that makes it harder than unlimited distributions, because what's gonna happen is.
The whole reason is for administrative ease, so.
Exactly.
The last thing we wanna do is create more.
Right,
So
and the
leaving it
reason-
as is creates less work than trying to come up with a number, then let's not even have this discussion.
What do you wanna do? Right now, it's at quarterly, with nothing besides the emergency provisions that allows the member to access their funds during that time.
How about we leave it as is, monitor and see
Yeah,
how
let's just
see
try
how
it for
much of
6
an
months
impact
or
it
something.
is, and then review it 6
Yeah.
months from now.
that's fine.
That's fair.
So I'll make a motion to continue as is,
I don't think,
6 months, well,
we just,
motion now.
we don't do anything, right?
You're
I mean,
noting-
if you wanna make a motion, you can make a motion, but you're not taking any action that's
No.
different than what you're doing right now.
So it's on the minutes that we're gonna leave it as is, as 100% opportunity to withdraw the funds, and we'll monitor how often that's happening over the next 6 months, we'll come back to the board and see if we need to do any change.
Motion.
Wait, say that again?
Say that again,
The whole thing,
Yeah,
we're leaving it as is.
With that.
with the quarterly schedule.
No, no.
no, we're not.
We're
so
not
right
adopting
now,
the
as
We're
is.
not adopting the administrative.
We already did, right?
You already adopted.
Yeah, it's already adopted, so meaning, leaving it as is means we're using this. So we are gonna have to.
How do we adopt it?
I thought we did, I'm asking.
No,
We
Yes.
already
administrative.
adopted.
Yes,
We didn't, you
This
might have tasked me
distribution-
with drafting the administrative rule, but you didn't, I mean, the practice is not in effect until the administrative rule's adopted. You have before you today consideration of the administrative rule.
Can we check past
I thought-
minutes to make sure that it was
Pretty
never
sure,
passed?
if not, then, I mean, it's just
I was
to
under the
allow
assumption that
unlimited.
he was as well. So there's confusion as to whether it was adopted or not.
I
No,
thought we
it was
adopted
adopted.
Yeah, like,
The meeting before last, and then I brought it again to add the RPRB
it's like
into the
July.
language.
I think it's July.
And we sent out a memo to everybody that it was gonna go into effect October 1.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
So it was just this distribution policy part of it, not,
Then it's just revoking the administrative rule.
So, I want to ask Michelle, are you saying that if we did it monthly, that would be that much more work?
if we did what now?
If we did it monthly, that would be that much more work administratively?
It would be more work than than having, unlimited distributions, yes. Because what would happen is, somebody sends in a distribution request for less than $5,000. Janice is gonna have to put that aside, and then wait until the quarterly distribution. Meantime, other distribution requests are coming in for more than $5,000, and those are just processed right away. So if we're gonna,
But I'm just saying, we also, kind of thinking about the retirees as well here. I understand you're worried about the.
Here we are, that's why we're having this discussion.
I understand
So
that.
Right, we keep putting it on the agenda,
We're keenly
so
aware
we
of
can talk about it.
access to your money, and we're trying to figure it out.
But right now, it's just very restricted 4 times a year.
It's not though, you can set up a scheduled distribution, and it's not restricting your money in that sense. You have access to it if you just give us a schedule, and if you plan it better, so we can follow your plan. It makes it easier on us and makes it, the money more productive if we know not to take too much of it out of the market, because we're expecting to distribute this amount, we only take out this amount. If we don't know what to expect, we have to take out an extra million that we can't invest, or whatever the number is, that's not productive. So we're just asking for you guys to plan better, so that we can plan the use of the money better.
I agree with you, except for one thing, you're asking the retiree to take the money out of the plan, to not get the interest on it, and take it off, and put it out of their pocket for money they may or may not need in the future by having a schedule.
But you know better
Or
that
may or
you're
may
gonna
not
need it.
They
You
may
know
or may
better
not
that
need
you're gonna need the money or not than we know though. So you know
No,
in your
you're talking about
finances whether you
emergencies
need
and
it or
things like
not.
that. Maybe you're going on vacation, they don't know you're gonna need it, so you gotta
You
take
don't know
money out a
you're
year in
going on a
advance
trip?
for your vacation?
You don't know that you're gonna go on a vacation.
Well,
But
you
don't know ahead of
say
time.
you do a scheduled distribution.
So,
A scheduled distribution, take $5,000 a month out, you may or may not need, and take it out of the interest market.
and then you can call us and say, stop the distribution next quarter.
So you can stop and start a division every month,
Every quarter. Every quarter,
every quarter.
yes.
So there's no limit on, you can start, I say I need money for 2 months and stop
Decrease
it.
it, you
I can
can-
say, give me money for 2 months, I can stop it.
Yes, you're not locked in from January 1st to December 31st with an annual
So
distribution.
that's not very clear to anybody, to be honest, because I've never done it, so I couldn't tell you, so I'm not using me for example. But then you're just making more trouble for them and saying, I don't know, I might need for 2 months, I'm gonna have her start a distribution, then I'm gonna tell her 2 months later to stop. That's not helping you guys any.
yes, it is, because we're doing it once a quarter, in a group, all at once.
Well, what,
So
okay,
it's
it had to
much
be 2 months
easier.
during that quarter. Can't be another quarter. Can't be lapping over another quarter.
I don't understand.
Well, that's the problem, there's too many options.
It's one
Let me know when you guys are ready.
Starts on this day, it stops on that day.
I thought you had a motion to maintain the status quo.
Which is,
Status quo is the administrative rule in effect.
And we're certain of that because, okay, then somebody needs to.
The
make a
reason it was
motion
gonna be
rescind it.
revised was to add the RPRB.
Oh.
Because the additional one only included drop.
All I know in the private sector, which I have set up, I can call up and they say, you need it 2-3 days, can you give me a couple of weeks to do better for this land? And I give them a quarter.
You're not gonna charge fees.
So then take the money out, and put it there.
I'm just telling you, but that's not new with it. I'm just saying that the private sector should be similar to what we
not
have.
helping your argument, Dean.
I'm sorry, I'm like really confused. When that motion was made, was the understanding that the status quo was the unlimited or?
Yes.
Okay, so to move forward with that intent, does somebody need to make a motion to rescind the administrative
Yes.
rule?
So I'm gonna make that motion. Yep. All right. Next item on the agenda, the adoption of form for the drop administrative rule. Continue to.
I mean, I do think that we need to flesh it out which way we're gonna do, because right now, the administrative rule is only applicable to the drop and not the RPRB, so.
No, meeting, we added the RPRB language, and there was a motion that was passed.
Last meeting? Board approved this presented, so the administrative rules in effect. The board approved the revised drop RPRB distribution policy as presented upon motion by Fleischner, seconded by Wilkie. Motion carried 5-0.
We're talking about the administrative rules for.
Talking about number
Quarterly,
three.
Oh, I thought we, no, I thought we moved on.
I moved on to number
We're on
three, the
we're
adoption
on-
of the
we're on
forms of
Okay, I just wanted everybody to be clear what.
Yeah, we're on number three.
The Calvert.
Okay. The administrative policy with.
Number three on
quarterly
under old
is-
business. That is the thing that's been there forever.
Yes.
So continue to, at this point. All right. Under the consent agenda, there was the invoices for ratification for warrant 57, 58, the invoices for payment approval, warrant 59, and the fund activity report from 8/2019 through 9/19/19. Everyone receive them, review them, questions, discussion?
They're not in the,
Any motions regarding the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Chris makes motion to approve, is there a second?
Second.
Brian seconds, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda, which includes warrant 57, 58, 59, and fund activity report, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. Trustees report, discussion, and action. Anything for anybody? All right, is there a motion to adjourn? All right. Chris makes a motion, Ralphie second, all those in favor of adjournment, say aye. Aye. Opposed, none. 10:16, motion, meeting's adjourned, next meeting is October 21st, 2019, 9 o'clock, here.
That's all your stuff.
Take care, everybody.